My son-in-law tapped the microphone twice, and the entire ballroom quieted like someone had turned a dial. 300 people in pressed suits and silk dresses turned toward him with the kind of attention that only money can buy. He smiled, the slow, practiced smile of a man who has spent years deciding which rooms he wants to own. Then he pointed at me. I was sitting at a corner table near the kitchen doors, a table with no centerpiece, no name cards, no champagne flutes. I had been moved there 40 minutes earlier by a young woman with a clipboard and a tight apologetic smile, who said there had been a seating mix-up. I had nodded and carried my purse and my dignity across that marble floor without making a scene, because that is what I have always done. My son-in-law's voice carried through the speakers. I also want to give a special thank you to our catering staff for the incredible work tonight. He paused, tilting his head toward my corner, and especially to our little helper in the blue sweater who's been so cheerful all evening. The room laughed. I was wearing my blue cardigan, the one my sister gave me for my birthday. I am Eleanor Price. I am 67 years old. I taught third grade for 31 years at Millbrook Elementary in Columbus, Ohio. I raised my daughter alone after my husband passed, and I worked a second job on weekends for 6 of those years so she could take dance lessons and go to the same summer camp as her friends. The woman, watching her husband call me a caterer, was my daughter, Cassandra. She did not correct him. She lifted her champagne glass to her lips and turned her face slightly away, like a person pretending not to see something on the sidewalk. Then, from somewhere near the center of the room, a man set his drink down on the table in front of him. Not with anger, just with the careful deliberateness of someone who has made a decision. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and spoke loud enough for the whole room to stop moving. "Excuse me, could someone tell me, is that woman Eleanor Price?" Of 14 Birchwood Lane in Westlake. Everything went still. My hands went cold against the tablecloth. That address. That was my address. Or rather, it had been my address. It was the address of the house I had lived in for 34 years. The house where I brought Cassandra home from the hospital. The house I sold 8 months ago to give my daughter the down payment on this one. Why did this stranger know my name? And why, when my son-in-law heard it, did the colour drain out of his face? His name was Marcus Hale, my son-in-law. We had never been close, but I had tried. For 5 years I had tried. He called me Eleanor in the clipped way people use a name when they want to remind you that you have no special claim on them. He bought expensive things and talked about them often. He had opinions about wine and zip codes and which kind of people belonged in which kinds of rooms. My daughter had married him 3 years ago, in a ceremony that cost more than I made in my last 4 years of teaching combined. I wore a lavender dress. I sat in the front row. Nobody moved me to a corner table then. The man who had spoken was still standing. He was somewhere around 50, broad through the shoulders, with the kind of steady eyes that don't look away when things get uncomfortable. He reached into the breast pocket of his jacket and produced a business card, holding it up between 2 fingers like a small flag. "My name is Richard Calloway," he said. "I'm a financial fraud attorney, and I've been looking for Eleanor Price for 6 weeks. Someone at a nearby table gasped. I heard it clearly, even though my ears felt full of water. I heard my own breathing. I heard my heart, which was doing something it had never done before, beating fast and slow at the same time, like it couldn't decide whether to run or stop entirely. Marcus moved toward the microphone quickly. Too quickly. He tried to smile. "Richard, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but this is a private party. Whatever legal questions you have can be handled through my office on Monday." Richard Calloway did not sit down. "Mrs. Price," he said, looking directly at me now, "are you aware that 3 loans have been taken out in your name in the past 14 months, totaling $280,000? I heard my own voice before I knew I was speaking. "No," I whispered. "I am not." Marcus laughed. "It came out too high. This is absurd. Someone call security." But no one called security. 300 people were very quiet and very still, and I think most of them understood, the way people understand when they have seen enough of the world, that something true had just entered the room. Let me go back to the beginning, because that is where this really started. Not tonight in this ballroom, 14 months ago in my kitchen, on a Tuesday afternoon in October, when Cassandra came to visit without calling first. I knew before I opened the door. A mother knows. The way she knocked 3 quick raps. Then silence was the knock of a person who needs something and is already rehearsing how to ask. She was beautiful in the way she had always been beautiful. Dark hair, wide eyes, the smile she had inherited from her father that made you want to give her whatever she was about to ask for. She hugged me at the door, longer than usual. Then she came inside and sat at my kitchen table and looked around the room like she was calculating something. "I love this house," she said. "I know you do," I said. She had her hands flat on the table. Her ring caught the light. "Mom, Marcus and I found a place." I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from her. "Tell me about it." She did. A house in Worthington with high ceilings and a big yard and a kitchen with an island and French doors that opened onto a patio. She talked about it the way she used to talk about things she wanted as a girl, with total certainty that wanting something hard enough was almost the same as having it. The price was $720,000. I set my coffee cup down. "Cassandra, I know," she said. "I know, Mom. But Marcus has the income for it. The bank just needs a stronger down payment. We're $40,000 short." She paused. "We were hoping, we thought, since your house is paid off." I looked around my kitchen. The window over the sink that I had replaced twice. The floor I had repainted myself the summer after her father died because I needed something to do with my hands. The back door that stuck in winter and that I had learned to shoulder open at exactly the right angle. 34 years. "You want me to sell this house?" I said. "We would pay you back," Cassandra said quickly. "Once we're settled. Marcus's promotion is coming. We just need the boost right now." I should have said no. I want to be honest with you about that. I want you to know I am not telling this story as a woman who was foolish. I am telling it as a woman who loved her daughter so much that she let love make the decision instead of sense. I said yes. The sale closed 7 weeks later. I moved into a small apartment on Clement Street with 2 bedrooms and 1 window that faced a brick wall. I did not tell anyone I cried the first night. I put a plant on the windowsill and told myself it was fine. I gave Cassandra $310. She cried when I handed her the cashier's check. She said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." She hugged me for a long time. Marcus shook my hand and said, "Eleanor, this means everything." I drove home to my apartment and made soup and watched television and did not let myself think too hard about what I had done. 3 months later, Cassandra called and asked me to come by the new house to sign some paperwork. "Just HOA registration stuff," she said. "They need proof of family connection for the community welcome packet." I went on a Saturday morning. The house was beautiful. I won't pretend otherwise. The French doors were exactly as she described them. The kitchen was warm and full of light. I sat at their island, and Cassandra made me tea, and Marcus brought out a folder of papers and said, "It's just formalities. There's a lot of paperwork with a new property." I did not have my reading glasses. I told him so. He smiled. "It's literally just your name and address on 3 spots. Standard stuff." He pointed. I signed where he pointed. I went home feeling like a good mother. I had no idea what I had signed. 2 months after that, a letter came to my apartment from a bank I did not recognize. I opened it at my small kitchen table. It said I had a loan account with a balance of $94,000 and that my first payment was 31 days past due. I read it 3 times. I do not have a loan with that bank. I have never had a loan with that bank. I have not had a loan of any kind since I paid off my mortgage 11 years ago. I keep careful records. I am a schoolteacher. I know how to keep records. I called the number on the letterhead. A woman asked for the last 4 digits of my social security number. When I gave them, she said, "Yes, Mrs. Price. This account was opened 14 months ago. Would you like to review the transaction history?" My mouth went dry. "Yes," I said. "Please." She read me a list of deposits and withdrawals I had never made. The largest withdrawal, $61,000, had gone to a company called Hale Property Holdings. Harley, my son-in-law's last name. I hung up and sat in that small kitchen for a long time. The brick wall outside my window had never looked so close. I called Cassandra that evening. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright. "Mum, how are you?" "I got a letter today," I said. "From Meridian Capital Bank." Silence. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of someone who already knows exactly what you're about to say. "Oh," she said finally. "That, Cassandra. What is that account?" she exhaled. "Mum, I can explain. It's Marcus needed it for the business. It was temporary. You signed the authorization when you came over in January. It was all above board, I promise. I did not authorize a loan, I said. I signed an HOA form. Her voice shifted. Quieter now. More careful. Mum, there was a lot of paperwork that day. You may have signed more than you realized. I felt something change in my chest. Not anger yet. Something colder. The feeling of understanding something you did not want to understand. I want my name off of that account, I said. It's not that simple right now, she said. The timing is bad. Marcus is in the middle of something. If you pull out now, Cassandra, I said. I sold my house for you. She went quiet again. Then, I know, Mom, and we are so grateful. But this is it's temporary. It will all be sorted by spring. I just need you to trust us for a little longer. I did not sleep that night. Over the next 6 weeks, 2 more letters arrived from 2 more banks. Different account numbers. Same pattern. My name on loans I had never applied for. Money withdrawn into accounts I could not trace. I kept every letter in a folder on my kitchen counter. I was not sure what I was going to do with them yet. Part of me still believed there was an explanation I hadn't heard yet. Part of me was still waiting for my daughter to call me back and say it was all a mistake. Then the invitation came. A thick ivory envelope with gold lettering. A housewarming party, they called it. Though they had lived there for 8 months. Marcus had sent personalized invitations to 300 people. He had hired a catering company, a jazz quartet, and a photographer. Cassandra called 2 days before. Mom, you'll come, right? It would mean so much to have you there. I went because she asked me. I went because I still loved my daughter. I went because I was still hoping that when she looked at me in a room full of people, she would remember who I was to her. Instead, she let her husband move me to a table near the kitchen and call me the catering staff. And a man named Richard Calloway stood up and said my name into the silence. Now Richard Calloway was walking toward me across the ballroom floor. Marcus stepped in front of him, but 2 things stopped him. The look on Richard's face and the quiet understanding that 300 phones were now pointing at this exact moment. Richard spoke around Marcus as if he weren't there. Mrs. Price, I was hired by Meridian Capital Bank and 2 other lending institutions to locate you. There are 3 delinquent loan accounts tied to your social security number and your former address at 14 Birchwood Lane. The combined outstanding balance, with penalties, is now $312,000. Someone at a table nearby said, Lord have mercy. Marcus grabbed the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a misunderstanding. Mr. Calloway, I'd ask you to take this conversation outside. Richard turned to look at Marcus for the first time. His voice was measured. Not angry. Not performing. Just clear. Mr. Hale, I've sent 4 certified letters to this address in the past 6 weeks. None were responded to. 2 phone calls to your attorney's office went unreturned. A process server was turned away at the gate twice. He paused. I did not crash your party. I attended as the guest of your neighbour, Dr. Finch, who is sitting at table 7 and can confirm that. He looked back at me. I came because this was the only way I could find your mother-in-law. The room was so quiet, I could hear the ice settling in glasses. Cassandra finally spoke. She was still standing near the front of the room. Her voice came out smaller than I had ever heard it. Marcus, what is he talking about? Marcus turned to her fast. It's nothing. It's a paperwork issue. I'm handling it. $300,000 is not a paperwork issue, Richard said. And Mrs. Price's name is on every document. Cassandra looked at me across the room. I have spent 67 years reading my daughter's face. I know every version of it. I knew, in that moment, that she was not hearing this for the first time. Her eyes weren't wide with shock. They were wet with something else. Something closer to shame. Marcus took her by the arm and leaned close to her ear. I could not hear what he said, but I saw her face close like a door. An older man near the back stood up and said loudly, I'm Walter Chen. I donated $40,000 to Hale Property Holdings last year. I was told it was a real estate investment fund. He looked at Marcus. Is that connected to this? A woman across the room said, My husband and I put in 25. The room began to turn. Richard Calloway looked at me. Mrs. Price, would you be willing to speak with me privately? I know this is a lot to take in. Marcus stepped forward again. His voice was low now, controlled. He was still trying to own the room even as it slid out from under him. Eleanor, don't say a word. Not one word. Do you understand me? It was the first time all evening he had spoken to me, like I was a person. I looked at my son-in-law. I thought about the Saturday morning in January, the folder of papers, my missing glasses, his reassuring smile. I thought about the letters in the folder on my kitchen counter. I thought about the brick wall outside my window and the house on Birchwood Lane with the back door that stuck in winter. I stood up. I picked up my purse. My knees were not entirely steady, but I made them work. I walked across that marble floor, not to the kitchen doors this time, not to any corner, straight down the center of the room, past the jazz quartet who had stopped playing, past the 300 guests with their phones and their champagne, past my daughter who could not look at me, and I stopped in front of Richard Calloway. "Tell me everything," I said. We sat in a small room off the main hallway, a hotel meeting room with a round table and a whiteboard no one had erased. Richard opened a slim briefcase and laid documents across the table in careful rows. He was methodical, patient. He reminded me, in an odd way, of a very good teacher. The first loan, he explained, had been taken out 14 months ago, right after I gave Cassandra the money from the sale of my house. My name, my social security number, my former address, signed application. The signature on file was not identical to mine, but close enough to pass initial review. The second loan, 90 days later. Same structure, a different bank. The third, 6 months ago. This one was larger. The documents included a limited power of attorney, a 2-page form that authorized a representative to act on my behalf in financial matters. The signature on it matched the paperwork I had signed in January at their kitchen island. The form I had thought was HOA registration. "He gave you a stack of papers," Richard said. "The power of attorney was in the middle, 3rd page in." I stared at the document. My signature was right there. I recognized it, even though I did not remember making it. "The funds from all 3 loans," Richard continued, "were deposited into an account belonging to Hale Property Holdings and then moved within 72 hours to a secondary account we are still tracing." He paused. "We believe there are other investors involved, people who gave money to Mr. Hale's real estate fund, believing it was legitimate." I thought of Walter Chen standing up in the ballroom. $25,000, $40,000. "Why didn't anyone contact me sooner?" I asked. "We did," he said. He slid a paper across the table. 4 certified letters to 14 Birchwood Lane. "I don't live there anymore," I said quietly. "I sold that house. To pay for theirs." Richard looked at me for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said, and the way he said it without flinching, without looking somewhere else, made my eyes sting. I pressed my hands flat on the table. "Teachers learn early that you can feel whatever you need to feel once the children are gone." "What do I need to do?" I asked. He was still explaining my options: legal counsel, a fraud affidavit, coordination with the other lenders when the door opened. It was Cassandra. She had taken off her heels. She was holding them by the straps, her bare feet on the carpet, her dress slightly wrinkled from where she had been pressing her hands against it. Her mascara had tracked 2 careful lines down her face. Richard started to say something. I shook my head at him. He stayed quiet. Cassandra stood just inside the door. She did not look at Richard. She looked at me. "Mom," she said, "I need to tell you something." "Sit down," I said. She sat. She had known about the first loan. That was the first thing she said. Marcus had told her it was a bridge loan, temporary financing, something that would be paid back before any statement was generated. He said my name was needed for the paperwork because the business was in a growth phase and needed the appearance of more assets. He said it would never affect me. He said I would never even know. "And you believed him?" I said. She swallowed. I wanted to believe him. "There's a difference between those 2 things," I said. She nodded. Her hands were in her lap. "When the second letter came, one of them came here, to this address. Before we changed the mailing, I intercepted it. Marcus told me to throw it away. He said he was handling it." She stopped. "I threw it away." I said nothing. "When he asked me to bring the papers to your apartment," she said, her voice fraying at the edges, "he told me what to tell you. He picked the folder with the power of attorney in the middle. He said your eyesight wasn't great." She covered her mouth. "I brought you the papers, Mom. I sat there, and I watched you sign them, and I didn't say anything because I was scared of what would happen if I did." "Scared of what?" I asked. She looked up. "Scared that he would leave. Scared that everything would fall apart. Scared that I had let myself get so far in that there was no way out. Her voice broke. Scared that you would find out how much I had failed you. Silence. My daughter is 41 years old. She is not a child. I want to be clear about that. She made choices. She watched her husband use my name and my signature and the trust I had placed in her. And she said nothing. That is not a small thing. I did not wave it away that night, and I am not waving it away now. But I also know my daughter. I know the 6-year-old who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. I know the 14-year-old who cried in the school bathroom and called me from a payphone. I know all the versions of Cassandra that exist before and underneath, the one sitting across from me in a wrinkled evening gown. I need you to give a statement, I said. Everything you just told me. To Mr. Calloway, and to whoever else needs to hear it. She nodded. I will. And then, I said, we are going to have a very long conversation. Not tonight. But soon. She nodded again. I turned back to Richard. What else do you need from me? Marcus was found in the private parking structure at 11:17 that night, backing his car toward the exit. 2 officers from the County Financial Crimes Unit were waiting. They had been notified by Richard Calloway before the party ended. I learned later that 3 of Marcus's former investors, Walter Chen among them, had already filed complaints months earlier that were slowly working their way toward exactly this moment. Tonight had simply accelerated the timeline. He did not go quietly. He said it was a misunderstanding. He said the loans were legal. He said I had signed everything willingly and that I could confirm it if anyone would let him speak to me. No one let him speak to me. I sat in that small meeting room for another 2 hours, giving a formal recorded statement. I told them about the sale of my house. I told them about January in the folder and my missing glasses. I told them about every letter in the folder on my kitchen counter, which I had not thrown away. Richard said the letters were important. He said people who keep their letters are the ones who can be believed. I went home to my apartment on Clement Street at 2 a.m. I sat in my kitchen and made a cup of tea I did not drink. I looked at the brick wall outside my window, and I thought about Birchwood Lane, about the back door that stuck, about the window over the sink, about 34 years of ordinary, unremarkable, irreplaceable life. Then I thought about the look on my daughter's face when she walked into that meeting room without her shoes on. I did not forgive Marcus. I want to be honest about that too. Forgiveness, for something like this, is a longer road than one night can cover. But I thought about Cassandra. And I thought that perhaps there was a version of this story that did not end with everything gone. In the weeks that followed, Marcus was formally charged with mortgage fraud, fraudulent misrepresentation, and financial elder abuse, a charge I had not known existed until Richard Calloway explained it to me. It carries additional penalties in our state when the victim is over 65. I was 67. Cassandra cooperated with the investigation fully. Her attorney negotiated. She was not charged. She lost the house. That was not a small thing to lose, but she lost it because it had been built on a foundation that was never real. She came to my apartment on a Wednesday morning in November with a box of pastries and sat at my small kitchen table the way she used to sit at the big one on Birchwood Lane. We talked for 4 hours. Some of what we said was hard. Some of it I will keep between the 2 of us. But before she left, she said, I don't know how to be sorry enough for what I let happen to you. I thought about it for a moment. You can start, I said, by being someone who doesn't let it happen again. Richard Calloway filed a fraud affidavit on my behalf that cleared the loans from my credit record. The funds Marcus had moved were partially recovered through asset seizure, and the court ordered restitution to the defrauded investors, including a settlement that came, in part, to me not the full value of my house, but something, enough to matter. I did not use it to buy another house. I used part of it to take my sister to visit our mother's hometown in rural Pennsylvania, something we had always talked about doing. I used another part to set up a small college fund for my neighbor's granddaughter, a girl who reminds me of every child I ever taught, who was going to be fine if someone would just believe in them early enough. 6 months after the night of the party, I was asked to speak at a community legal forum about financial fraud targeting older adults. The room was a church hall in Westerville, not a ballroom, no chandeliers, no jazz quartet, just folding chairs and a podium, and about 80 people who had come because they or someone they loved had been through something similar. I stood at that podium and looked out at those faces. I sold my house, I said, because I loved my daughter, and I signed papers I couldn't read because I trusted her. And for a long time after I found out the truth, I kept asking myself how I could have been so foolish. The room was very quiet. Then I stopped asking that, I said. Because being willing to love someone, being willing to trust those are not weaknesses. They are just the ways that people who love too generously are sometimes taken advantage of. And there is a difference between the two. Someone in the third row was nodding. An older woman with white hair and her hands in her lap. The letters I kept, I said. That is what made the difference. Keep your letters. Read what you sign. And if someone takes your glasses away from you before you can sign something, put your glasses back on. A few people laughed. Softly. Gratefully. I was moved to a corner table that night, I said. And I walked across that room anyway. I paused. I have been quiet for a very long time. About many things. I was quiet when Marcus was unkind in small ways that seemed easy to excuse. I was quiet when the letters came and I told myself there was probably an explanation. I was quiet because I was afraid that speaking would cost me my daughter. I thought about Cassandra. About our Wednesday morning in my small kitchen. About the woman she was trying to become. It didn't, I said. Speaking the truth cost me a house I had already given away, and a son-in-law who was never what I thought he was. That is not nothing. But the things it gave me back, my name, my record, my peace, those were mine to begin with. I had just stopped fighting for them. I stepped back from the podium. Somewhere across town, Marcus was awaiting sentencing. Somewhere in a borrowed apartment, Cassandra was rebuilding. And I was standing on my own 2 feet, in front of 80 people who needed to hear what I had learned, under lights that asked nothing from me except to be seen. I was not a joke. I was not a prop. I was not the catering staff. I was Eleanor Price. And when someone finally said my name out loud in a room full of strangers, I answered, if this story found you at the right moment, if you have ever been moved to a corner and told to be quiet, please know this. The truth does not expire. It waits for you. And when you are ready to say it, it will still be there, solid and unchanged, ready to hold your weight. Like and subscribe if this story meant something to you, because sometimes the quietest people have the most important things to say. Ender.